Um, and welcome to members, officers, and any members of the public, which I'm not sure we have, and the press who don't seem to be here either, but I think they pick it up from our YouTube later on. Anyway, let's just move in. If we can authorise me, please, to sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of June 2021 as a correct record of the proceedings. Thank you. Welcome. Apologies for absence, Julie.
We have apologies from Councillor Byrne.
Thank you. Additional agenda items, Malcolm?
Yes, Chairman, there's an additional agenda item as agenda item 14, the additional restrictions grant discretionary business grant scheme.
Very much. Urgent decisions. Malcolm, are there any urgent decisions?
No, Chairman, there are none.
And disclosure of interests. I think all members are aware of the need to disclose. Please do so.
I think I probably need to disclose community grants as I'm the chairman of Settlescombe Parish Council, which is mentioned in the
Chairman, I don't know whether officers, but I will leave the meeting for the discussion of agenda item 13, as I have an interest, an active interest in the outcome.
So, any members who are disclosing, please do so at the beginning of the commencement of the item in question. So, I think we're ready to go into the first agenda item. If I could just make sure that you speak into the microphone area, because sometimes it doesn't come over terribly well when being recorded. So, if you can make sure that you continue to speak into that, it will help. So, the first item, the revenue budget. Draft revenue budget and capital programme outturn 2021. This is a report of Tony Baden, Finance Manager. Tony.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. The first thing to say about the numbers is that they are still subject to external audit, so that needs to be caveated. But that being said, I don't expect the numbers to change as a result of audit. Or if they do change, the changes will be very minor and insignificant. So the headline position is that the draft final position is a deficit of £1.284 million, which is about £367,000 over the targeted use of reserves. So if members recall, when we set the budget for 2021, we always had planned and intended to use £917,000 worth of reserves, and we've ended up using £1.284 million. Now, of that estimated deficit, we estimate that about £485,000 of it was due to the COVID response. So another way that you could look at it, if you took the £485,000 out of the deficit, then the actual fact the drawdown on reserves would have been £799,000. So we would have actually been slightly under what we had intended to use. So all in all, I mean, it's been quite a difficult year to forecast. I'm sure members will appreciate that. And I think we've actually done quite well in getting as close as we've got to. So the format's in its usual, the report's in its usual format. The first table shows the budget versus actual, and then there's the variances within that table, and then there's another table underneath that shows the changes at a sort of detailed level, if you like, between quarters 3 and quarter 4. And there is some text or some explanation to explain the variances in paragraphs 5 to 24. So the main changes, I mean, there have been several, but the main changes from quarter 3 to quarter 4, in net terms, we decreased our, the potential overspend on COVID decreased by about 427,000. And the amount of money that we drew down from reserves to fund capital expenditure, that also decreased by 734,000. And that was as a result of the slowdown in the pace of the capital programme, which we reported throughout the financial year to members. So the COVID one was much more difficult to predict. The drawdown to fund capital expenditure was probably more predictable. So paragraph 25 sets out the overall impact of the forecast on our reserve levels. So we were expecting them to reduce to 12.7 million, but it's actually reduced only to 13.2 million. So that's a good thing. But members should note that, as I say, a large amount of this is due to the fact that we didn't draw down so much to fund capital expenditure as we first thought. And if those schemes duly complete in 21-22, then that again will impact on the level of reserves. Just a quick thing about a quick mention about the collection fund performance. Our council tax collection was about 2.88% lower than the previous year, and business rates about 4.71% lower. Now, that doesn't affect in-year performance, because once the council tax is set and the business rates are set for the year, that becomes our income. But if the collection fund does run at a deficit, then we do get hit with that in future years. Now, we're factoring that into the medium-term plan, the medium-term financial plan going forward. So when we report that to members in a few weeks or a few months' time, it will be clear what the impact has been on our medium-term budget forecasts. And also, a new thing that has been brought in for the collection fund, a deficit, which I think I've reported to Cabinet before, is that we'll actually be able to smooth the deficit or any deficit over a period of 3 years. So it does soften the blow for us somewhat. And as I say, just a very quick word again about the capital programme. The pandemic did slow down the pace of the programme. We only spent about 5.5 million in the end. And again, the figures are shown in Appendix A, I think it is. That's it, Chair. If anybody's got any questions, I'll try my best to answer them.
Thank you, Tony. Are there any members of Cabinet that would want to ask a question of Tony at this stage, or failing that, are there any other members here that would like to? Yes, Councillor Projan.
Just a quick question, really, about that sort of $500,000 due to COVID. Presumably LGA are campaigning for us to get that money back. You do have a paragraph on whether we know or not, and we don't know yet whether we're going to get that cost back.
Yeah, Chair, I think it's prudent and wise to assume that is going to be the cost that a council will have to bear. I mean, there is something else to point out about that, and I have made the point in the report that it is an estimate. Some of the figures are very hard. There's no hard and fast rule. There's no exact science behind it. We can make an assessment on why our income levels were down. Some of it will be down to COVID, and there may be other reasons behind it. So it is actually very difficult to give a precise figure. And I think it's probably wise to assume at this stage that we're just going to have to suffer that and absorb it.
Thank you, Tony. Councillor Kevin Dixon.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it should be noted that some of the decisions that we made have actually affected income. We didn't have to give rent rebates to some of our tenants. We didn't have to stop car parking charges during the lockdown, so that we actually did affect our own income by some of the decisions we made. I think they're the right decisions we made, clearly, but there is obviously a cost to that, and I don't think that we can expect to be reimbursed for those local decisions that we made for the benefit of our community.
Thank you. And if one identifies the fact that, per head of population, the underwriting costs of this pandemic was perhaps £5 a head, and I think that, one can look at these in broad figures and to identify where some of our other local authorities have had a very, very bleak and difficult time. So thank you, Tony. If there are no questions on this, Kevin, if you're happy to move forward.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the report for noting, and just to be aware that Scrutiny have already debated this. I don't know if the chairman of Scrutiny wants to,
any comments,
comment anything on that meeting.
Paul?
No, Chair, no, we just looked through it and we didn't have anything to add. So
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. And if we can, this is for noting. There's no vote on that? No. Okay, if we can move forward. Well, this looks like this is Tony. Well, I'm not sure. Item 7, funding residential development. Who's actually presenting this, Tony? Is it again? You're obviously at the Tony Baden show tonight. So as finance manager, thank you. And this is the report to approve a loan facility of up to £80 million to support delivery of Alliance Homes Rather Limited's business plan and to outline the mechanism for funding. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, thank you again, Chair. So, so the report, as you just said, it sets out a mechanism that allows or enables the council to provide a maximum of £80 million loan facility to Alliance Homes Rather. I stress the word maximum. We may not go as high as that. So this basically allows the council and the company to enter into a series of loan arrangements that will give both the council and the company some flexibility in terms of how much we borrow over the the life of the programme, or the life of the company rather, and for how long. So, given a very, and I kind of exaggerate in a sense to make the point, but we won't have to borrow £80 million in one hit. We'll be able to do it in stages, and we'll be able to take advantage, similarly, of any internal loan balances that we have, that we will obviously avoid us paying interest charges, and also to take out short-term loans, which will be cheaper than obviously taking out an £80 million loan over a longer period of time. As we go along with this, we will seek advice from our treasury management advisors as to how we sort of structure that loan deal, if you like, those loan deals with regards to the external borrowing requirements, so that we can do them in the most cost-effective and efficient manner. So, sorry, I'm nearly there. So this, I think also the advantage of doing it this way will give our potential partners confidence that that the company has the capability to deliver the business plan objectives that it's entering into. The chief executive and the finance manager, it says in the report, the proposals that they will have delegated authority to enter into these agreements with Alliance Homes Rather on behalf of the council, and we shall do so in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance and performance management. So, yeah. Hopefully, Chair, that was clear. And again, I'll try and take any questions at the moment.
Thank you, Tony. So this really is like a headroom facility where one will go in and out of seeking funding and then repaying it accordingly. So it's there in case of need. Are there any questions of Cabinet members of Tony? No? Any members would like to make an inquiry? Paul, please.
Can I, as chairman of scrutiny, I have to scrutinise, I suppose, or ask the question. I see it's resolved. So it's resolved it's a resolved decision. Would it be better off as a recommendation to council? That's a sort of technical question, because I can almost hear my phone ringing to call it in, if you know what I mean. So I'm merely thinking, would this be quicker, if you like, as a recommendation to council? Because council's only in a fortnight's time. It's scrutiny next week, then there's council. Rather than calling it in, I'm sure I'll be requested to call this in. It's a big chunk of money, obviously, and that's sort of where I'm going. Sort of, if someone wants to ask, I'm sort of looking on due diligence, if you like. We've seen over the years where councils have borrowed money and sort of run into difficulty, and you sort of read the reports or hear on the news and so that the process wasn't as good as it was, and it should have been called in by someone, and it should have been not. And I don't want. I'm not saying it's going to go wrong, but I don't want to be that person who didn't ask the question, if you know what I mean. So I'm merely sort of thinking, would it be better off as a referred to council for decision at council?
Perhaps there needs some clarification or guidance as to what this facility is. We're not going out and buying a Marriott hotel or a Waitrose shopping centre. This is a line of finance to enable us as a local authority to provide homes for our residents. And, you have to fund it somehow. And this is a mechanism of funding it at the cheapest possible cost. And I don't know whether, Tony, you want to add any clarification as to how this is structured, but we're not borrowing £80 million today and going out and spending it tomorrow. This is a line of finance that will be called in as and when over the programme of the development of housing. Can you give? Sorry. Oh, Robin, sorry, Rob, I didn't see your finger go up.
I think it was just on sort of point of clarity, really, because at the end of the day, council has adopted the business plan and approved the business plan of Rother or Alliance Homes Rother, as far as I understand. From that, the capital programme already contains £80 million for the expenditure of Alliance Homes Rother. So it would be what the basis of calling would be given that the fact that the council has already adopted the business plan of the company and has adopted the principle of spending £80 million effectively on new property within Rother. So it would be difficult to call it in on a matter of principle if those principles have already been agreed by members at full council, because that would have been a full council decision. Okay.
If I could just, it's just, I hope you sort of appreciate. I'm just sort of doing. I'm just doing my job, if you like. It just, it's a lump. It's a lot of money. I know we've sort of said the council has the approval, so I'm just sort of ticking boxes. Yeah.
Thanks for playing devil's advocate, Paul. I think that explanation is quite clear. Is anybody else would want to make a comment? Councillor Project.
I know what you mean, but wouldn't it be more effective to actually scrutinise the first bit of loan that we apply for or spend? Wouldn't that be a better use of scrutiny?
Robin, is that is that something which is a practical way of dealing with it?
I think, Ben may want to come in on effectively the governance side and the reporting of activities of Alliance Homes. As I say, as far as I'm concerned, that the approval in principle of what we're doing as an authority is already in place. Therefore, whilst I think it'd be appropriate to report to overview and scrutiny what the activities are, and what's been going on and what's been delivered, that seems fair enough. The governance arrangements are all in place in terms of the relationship between the company and the council as well. They're all in place. So all the mechanisms are there, the shareholders agreement, everything else is all there that shows the transparency around the arrangements that are in place. I think it'd be appropriate, and they may want to comment, I think it's appropriate that Alliance Homes report to council and to scrutiny about the activities and the deliverables that they've been able to do. And that's your opportunity to discuss and challenge and whatever you might want to do as members. I think in order for the company effectively to deliver and to deliver as quickly as possible, clearly you want those processes in terms of the money, given the assurances to other parties and contractors who will be contracted with to develop properties, that's all in place and ready to roll. And effectively what the leader said is this is a facility to use. I don't see the council having to spend £80 million in any one chunk. And actually what the expectation is, it will be short-term money because the properties will either be disposed of to a housing association or sold to market. So it shouldn't expose the authority at any point to a significant level of borrowing. That's hopefully we'll see that through the delivery, particularly as you've got Stephen here tonight to talk about Blackfriars. We'll see that delivery, quickness of that delivery, and then return to the council overall funds. But
thank you for that added comment, Robin. I think that's very useful. And of course, there's going to be openness and transparency that we will be reporting as to the activities of the Rother Alliance. So, Homes. So that's important, which I'm sure Ben will make sure that is the case that all members are aware of. Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to reinforce that as well. Obviously, we're recommending that as part of this process, the mechanism and its implications be reviewed by audit and standards at least on an annual basis. I think the problem with any sort of call-in at the moment is all we're asking for is a headroom facility. We haven't got the details in terms of how that's charged in interest, how we fund that as a council in terms of our treasury management. And so until we sort of able to work out that detail, we're not really in a position to provide an awful lot more detail to overview and scrutiny. What I would say is we'd be more than happy to come and present that early once we sort of ascertain that detail and make sure that overview and scrutiny have the opportunity to ask the questions that they would like to.
Councillor Brian Grayson.
Thank you, Chair. I must declare an interest as one of the directors of Alliance Homes Rother. Mr. Hook just said basically what I was going to point out, which was paragraph 7 about the recommendation that it goes to audit and standards. But should that not be in the recommendation of the resolution at the beginning? Because there's no mention of that in the 4 items offers as recommendations to be resolved. There's no mention of the review to the scrutiny. Audit and standards.
Thank you for that point, Brian. Good point. I think that's raised. Councillor Kieran-Dixon.
Thank you, Chairman, and Councillor Drayson has just said what I was going to suggest, that
I think Councillor Osborne is absolutely right, and he's right to bring this up. The fact is that this has gone wrong in other councils. We've got to say that this is, you only got to look to Croydon, where have got into a terrible mess with various housing companies, and we don't want anyone to think that we're going to be going anywhere near that road, because we're not. And hence why we got paragraph 7 put in, that the Audit and Standards Committee has the power to look at any company that is wholly owned by the council, just like it looks at the council's accounts. It can look at other homes' accounts, and should do and will do. And I was going to suggest that really to strengthen this, and if it would stop a call in, then I think we should be doing it, because we don't want to be unnecessarily having a call in for items that are maybe just points of confusion. That we add a recommendation that both audit and standards and overview and scrutiny committees are encouraged to scrutinise the activities and borrowing of Alliance Homes Rother. That's acceptable to my colleagues.
So we're looking to put that in as item 4 under the officer recommendations. 5, sorry. Just checking. Thank you. Is that okay, Ben, with you? Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Sorry.
Actually, I think Councillor Drayson has pretty well covered my thoughts as well. But the other thing was, on an annual basis, perhaps bearing in mind what's happening in the construction industry and the perfect storm that they're talking about in terms of supply and costs and things, could it be done sooner than that? I mean, could it be recommended that it's scrutinised a little bit earlier than an annual basis? Which might.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just given the speed at which development happens, I think annual's probably about right. I mean, as the chairman of overview and scrutiny will attest to, it's not a quick process in building houses. So, there'll be plenty of time to sort of to scrutinise that before anything goes too wrong.
Okay, thank you.
But I would assume that audit and standards and scrutiny could, if there were concerns, raise that with you for a report on an earlier nature. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Lynn, I didn't realise you had your hand up. So, any other questions? No. So if we can, with that amendment to item 5, as per your wording, Kevin, have you got that, Julie? Okay. Very good. If we can look to move this report, please.
Chairman, I'll be very pleased to move this report, and I think we should note it's an actual milestone in the council and what we're trying to do, and I'm very welcome that this is actually coming to reality.
And someone to second the report?
Yeah, I second it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if we can vote on this, please. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. And I think we just need to acknowledge on the Blackfriars project, while Stephen Martin's here tonight, the work that you and your team have put in to get us to this milestone. This is really a monumental stage, if you like, and it's a very exciting way forward. And thank you, Stephen. I know you've been acknowledged before, but it's just nice to keep acknowledging the fact of the work you've put in there, and also the very high sort of recommendations and acknowledgements we've had from the industry about what we're doing. Thank you very much. Yeah, please do. Thank you very much indeed. Ben, you've got nothing further to add on this. We're there with that. Okay, if we can just move forward. Bear with me, please. Item 8, Public Spaces Protection Order, Antisocial Behaviour, a report of Richard Parker Harding, Head of Environmental Services, Licensing and Community Safety. And I would just stress this is to get approval to carry out a public consultation on the public space protection orders. And perhaps Richard could just give us some detailed background of the reasons and the timing of this, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, the Council already has a public space protection order controlling antisocial behaviour. This order expires in November, and therefore, if you members wish to have a placement order or order at all, then we need to consult the public about the new order. The existing order has 3 basic elements. There's the control of alcohol consumption in public places, which just applies to Bexhill. There's controls on aggressive begging, which applies to Bexhill and Rye. And thirdly, there's controls on sleeping in public places, which applies to the whole district. Now, in order to justify having public space protection order, we need to have evidence that antisocial behaviour exists or is likely to occur, and we get this evidence primarily from the public consultation. When we carry out the public consultation, we will ask the public whether they are experiencing antisocial behaviour from any of these controls, and whether they get their support for the controls to exist. My recommendation is that we consult the public about the 3 existing controls, but we also add a new control around the issues around cycling and skateboarding and skating, etc., on Bexhill Promenade, which over the years has been a number of complaints to the council about that, in which we haven't been able to take any action. So that's an area which we could consult the public about having a new control. Obviously, the members may wish to consult on other controls, and Appendix A and B sort of gives examples of other controls which members could consider to consult on. Obviously, we will carry out the public consultation, and then we'll report back to Cabinet for a final decision.
Thank you, Richard. If there are any non-Cabinet members who would like to make any observation or question to Richard, Councillor John Barnes.
Yes, there was a paragraph later in this item, it isn't reflected in the consultation of parishes, which is about noise and noisy parties. And I just wondered whether through you, Leader, Mr. Parker Harding is satisfied he's got enough parts, or whether it might not be something that we could look at under this public spaces protection. We have had a number of local parties that have been pretty noisy, going on quite late at night.
Richard, would you like to make any comment, please?
It's been one of the consequences of the pandemic that there has been a significant increase in noise complaints, and a number of properties have been used for parties which weren't used for parties before. Obviously, we do have controls or would exist to control parties, and we obviously have the statutory nuisance provisions, and we can issue community protection notices under the Antisocial Behaviour Crime Peace Act 2014. Generally, those powers are sufficient, and obviously, public spaces protection order generally only applies to the public spaces and not to individual properties. And therefore, I think probably if we have particular problems with particular properties, we can issue community protection or notices, which would be more appropriate to deal with the nuisance of an individual property. So I wouldn't recommend including that within the order itself, because we can use the same controls, but focus it on one property using the community protection notice.
Thank you for that explanation. Does that help, John? Yeah, thank you. If I can just take a question from over here before I ask you to lead. Yes, Councillor Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned about the section of the order that criminalises sleeping in a public place. During COVID, we'd shown compassion by accommodating everybody. And do we now wish to turn the clock back by criminalising people who have the misfortune to be on the street? Or do we continue housing? Unfortunately, I learnt today that one of our housing officers had quoted a Supreme Court ruling at a potentially homeless person. Lord Justice Neuberger took the view that virtually everyone who is homeless suffers harm. The law states that the homeless person needs to suffer more harm than an ordinary person in order to be eligible for accommodation. Home Office guidelines, as stated in paragraph 11, advise against making orders that discriminate against homeless or young people. So a housing officer is likely to approach the homeless person offering accommodation. That's fine. Many homeless people have had a bad experience with the establishment and might not trust the official in question. Their confidence has to be gained. and they need to be coaxed into accommodation, not criminalised. I appeal to you to continue to show compassion, as we have done during COVID, and to drop the section of the Public Space Protection Order.
Richard, would you like to just make comment on that and the reason for its inclusion and how this will come out in the consultation to be addressed by members at that point?
When the existing order was originally drafted, we also took into account the needs of homeless people, and that's why part of the order requires the council officers to provide assistance and signposting to any homeless persons before we would take enforcement action. So before any homeless person will be served with a fixed penalty notice, the officers are obliged to provide support and assistance to them. At the moment, obviously, we have no homeless people because in the Everybody In project, people are being housed, and hopefully that will continue. I think what we do have to recognise is that people sleeping in tents on the beach, on people sleeping in vehicles on the beach or near the beach, does cause concern to local residents. And in those cases, we do need some powers to stop that antisocial behaviour occurring. As an authority, we have a stepped enforcement policy, so we always provide advice first, and actually taking enforcement action is always the last resort. But I think if we don't have this control, then there is obviously the difficulty that we may end up with people who do actually have accommodation but choose to live in tents and choose to live in vehicles on the seafront or near the seafront and other areas, and we won't be able to take any action to try and resolve that.
Thank you for that explanation. Councillor Kevin Dixon? Oh, right. If we're going on the same point, different point? Okay. Councillor Drayson, are you wanting to make a comment on that particular point? Right. Sorry. Yes, Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just on item 12 there, proposed controls with regard to cycling on the promenade. I know that when we sort of allowed cycling on the promenade some years ago, that was at a scrutiny meeting as well, which I was chairing, and a lot of effort had been put in by various groups, you know, to allow cycling on the promenade, and it would be a shame if now it become illegal. You know, obviously, you know, if you've got some crazy people trying to ride along there with people there at 20 miles an hour, or kids pulling wheelies or whatever, then that's a shame, and that should stop. And that's it. But equally, if you've got sort of kids, you know, walking along with their parents, do you stop them? Not doesn't seem fair. So I think, you know, I'm just thinking a lot of effort was put in years ago to get cycling on the promenade. So
I think this is all about proposing to undertake a consultation, and I think to do that, we want to be very open with residents and allow everyone to make their views about it, and I think there's every reason to do it in that open sort of way. Councillor Brian Drayson,
Thank you. My point, well, my first one I've got two, was also on paragraph 12. I know I've spoken to Mr. Parker-Harding at length about the proposed cycling. My concern is the wording of the consultation, because I took part in the last consultation, which was just basically the proposed PSPO, and whether you were in favour or not. And the wording can be quite important, because it does say it's about wanton and dangerous cycling and all the other things as well. And it's not stopping cycling, it's dangerous cycling. But we could be guilty of asking leading questions if we don't word it properly, and we're in danger of getting the answers we wanted anyway. And in paragraph A, appendix A, I'm guessing 5 and 6 are the sort of aimed really at Canberra Sands, and I know I was speaking to Mr. Parker-Harding about trying to add on something to all the other things about Canberra and the problems that we have, like the bins catching on light. I gather that's what 5's trying to get at. But you know, I hope again it's like aimed at people in Canberra, and they're reminded to tell us what you think might help solve the problems at Canberra.
Thank you.
I think we come back to the fact that, you know, officers will prepare the consultation documentation and we will go out to the public to seek their views, and I think that's very important. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you. Can I ask about the more modern phenomenon of e-scooters, which are just starting to become an absolute menace? I presume that we would be trying to stop e-scooters on Bexhill Promenade, but I fear that this is probably more of a district-wide issue. Been out and about, I have seen quite a lot of them menace on the pavement because they do go at great speed, and also been on the public highway, which I know is already illegal but exceptionally dangerous. Do we have enough in here to cover that, or do we need to add anything else in that we might want to stop?
I think it probably is included within the proposal in paragraph 12, but we can also make it more specific and include e-scooters specifically. I think that'll be helpful in terms of the public consultation. I think it'd be useful to do the public consultation on Bexhill Promenade first, and then if that gets support, then we could extend it to the rest of the district later. I mean, one of the advantages of the public space inspection order is that they can be amended quite quickly. Although they generally last 3 years, there's no reason why we shouldn't come back after 6 months and amend it to include the rest of the district. And it's quite a simple administrative process to actually amend the order. So there's no reason not to go for Bexhill Promenade to begin with, see how that works in practice, and then extend it to other high streets, to other areas of the district later on.
Thank you for that explanation, Richard. Councillor Timpey.
Yeah, thank you. Appendix A says that additional controls that could be included, and I've read them all, and I think they should all be included in the consultation. So is that what we're voting on, that we're saying, yes, we agree?
Richard?
Well, if you wish to propose that we consult on all the controls within Appendix A, then we can also then include it in the public consultation.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think they're all very valid and would like to see them in there.
Thank you. Perhaps before Catherine, Councillor Projak on the same points.
No, sir, not the same point. Well,
no.
Kind of. Thank you. I support Councillor Tempe, because in terms of 6, depositing domestic waste in bags or commercial waste in a litter bin, can we just do something about the parlous state of something has happened in our society where people just think they can put any rubbish anywhere, and we are working hard to provide extra litter bins and all sorts of things, and yet it's still going on. The point I wanted to make, though, I mean, please include something like that, not just commercial waste, but any waste. And somehow or other, we've got to have a campaign. I don't know whether it's about education or what it is, but there's certainly something going very wrong at the moment with people thinking that they don't need to bother, they can just throw it anywhere. And you've seen pictures of it, it looks dreadful and gives our district a very, very bad name. But the thing is, how do we enforce? Enforcing drinking in Camber. I mean, how do you do that?
Richard, would you like to make any comments?
Yes, I think in Appendix A that the Section 6 also really should include, includes all waste effectively. If you say domestic waste, commercial waste, and that's all the waste categories there are. I think that if we did have that control and we gave that publicity, that would be a way of trying to deter people from doing it. Because I think people generally think it's okay. People seem to think it's okay just to go to a recycling centre and leave their waste around the recycling bins now, and they also do it with litter bins, and they just, for some reason, there has been a change, and people think that that's acceptable because the council will just come along and collect it. But we do need to sort of go back to the idea that litter bins are for litter, and other means of waste should be disposed of in the proper way. So I think, like all these things, once you get the control in, then you can also then do the publicity and do some enforcement around that. Without the control, there's little point doing the enforcement.
Yeah, thank you. So the controls need to be all inclusive in order to have the authority to be able to enforce or otherwise, if that's the case. Councillor Christine Bailey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I support Councillor Timpey's addition of consulting and all the list here, but I just would like to ask a question about the producing or allowing the production of amplified sound on the beach, promenade or town centre in a manner that causes or likely to cause harassment, alarm or distress to any person. I mean, if we had that as a public space protection order and somebody came along and wanted to put on an event in the town centre, is there a mechanism for granting that event contrary to the public space protection order that we had established?
Well, it's a general principle that if the council has given permission to something, then it can't then take enforcement action. So if we have given permission for an event to be taking place, if we issue just a road closure or if we issue a temporary event notice, then that would supersede the public space protection order. We couldn't then take enforcement action.
So if it's an authorised event and it meets with all the compliance of an authorised event, these are for unauthorised events, I take it, where people are just pitching up and causing a nuisance to others, whatever it might be. Sorry, Catherine. So, please.
Yes, thank you. Very interesting discussion, I thought, if not slightly misplaced. I think we need to remember that this is about public spaces and not private spaces, because Mr. Parker Harding and his team have other mechanisms for dealing with noise, etc., emanating from a private space. This is about nuisance in public spaces. And it is, of course, only about, at the moment, consulting. When we see the proposal from Mr. Parker Harding after the consultation, then I think we will be having a much more in-depth discussion about what exactly it is we're trying to achieve and how we're trying to achieve it. So having said that, I would very much support consulting as outlined with the additions from Councillor Timpey.
Thank you.
But, sorry, before I go, I think consultation is always very difficult. If 100% of respondents want something banned, but there's only 3 people responded out of a population of however many we have, clearly that needs weighing up rather differently than if 5,000 people responded. And obviously you are professionally able to do that, Mr. Parker Harding, aren't you? Thank you.
Richard, please.
Yes, we obviously have a very able officer who deals with public consultation, Joanne Wright, and she has already drafted a consultation document, which we'll see look through tomorrow when this decision is made. And when we report back, we will tell you, the numbers of people who responded and also and give the percentages, so you do have a good feeling about what the public generally want. Because we need that information to justify the order.
We have done this process before. So it's not just coming to the table for the first time. Any other comments? No. Right. I can have someone to move the report.
I propose that, I thought.
Thank you. Did you? Yes, did you do it? A second?
I second, thank you.
If we can vote, please. Those in favour? Unanimous. And Richard will take away those observations which are there, and I'm sure will be giving us an updated situation nearer to the actual consultation going out. Item 9, the Housing Development Community-Led Housing Programme. This is a report of Amy Fern, Housing Development Manager, to update members on the Community-Led Housing Programme and to recommend new approvals required to continue momentum with a programme of projects. Amy, the floor is yours.
Apologies. This report updates members on progress of the Council's community-led programme and proposes several recommendations aimed at continuing to grow the community-led sector in Rother. This is with the overarching objective of increasing community-led housing schemes and the supply of new affordable homes in Rother towards meeting our corporate priorities and housing policy targets. The Rother community-led programme began in 2017 in response to funding received from government. This funding was aimed at helping 150 councils tackle the impact of second homes in local communities by supporting the growth of the community-led sector to deliver housing that would remain affordable in perpetuity for future generations. Robert was allocated just under 750,000 Community Housing Fund in total. A large proportion of this allocation has already been allocated to support delivery of the programme to date. First recommendation is to note the progress of the Community Housing Programme, and the second recommendation included in the report aims to secure vital funding necessary to support the continuation of the services provided by the Community Housing Hub plus Rother. Sussex Community Housing Hub is now well established, providing comprehensive project support and enabling services across Sussex. We have also used some of the allocation towards meeting pre-development costs required to progress community projects, to include revenue funding of Bexhill and Icklesham Parish Council CLT. Our first capital funding request has also been allocated towards the delivery of Rother's very first community-led housing scheme to support delivery of 15 much-needed affordable homes for local people. The scheme is being delivered by Hasto in partnership with Icklesham Parish CLT, which began on site on Main Road, Icklesham, in June of this year. The remainder of the report focuses on live projects included in the Rother programme, with specific recommendations aimed at progressing schemes, including Cemetery Lodge and land at Fairview. Other projects will emerge as the programme continues to gain momentum and as the Sussex Community Housing Hub continues to offer their services when new opportunities arise. I'd be happy to take any questions members may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy, for bringing the report forward. Are there any questions from members? No? Yes, there is. Councillor John Barnes. Excuse me, I don't think your microphone is just on now. Yes.
Apologies. This is something the Housing Task Force identified as an important part of the strategy. But I think one of the things we need to build into our model, and it's built in at Icklesham, and I hope really that Amy can confirm it's built in elsewhere. There are really two types of demand out in the rural area. There is one for rented accommodation per se, but because of quantitative easing, prices of houses have just gone through the roof. And therefore there is another type of demand, which really involves shared ownership. And Icklesham, I think, is a good scheme in that it makes a provision for that ability to staircase within the property. Now, clearly, this is not a case of staircasing to 100% because these are community land trusts. I hope very much that in the model, we build both types of tenure in, because it seems to me that Icklesham have got it right, and I would want to make sure that other places meet both types of demand. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, John. And I'm sure, Amy, we've picked up as we've done the Icklesham project, and that we will have a framework to be able to produce what we want to go forward on. And perhaps you'd like to make any observations to Councillor Barnes' comments.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Barnes. All of the schemes are essentially informed by a housing needs survey or raw housing needs data. Bexhill CLT, for example, have just requested data from the housing register for numbers of people who have a local connection with Bexhill and who've expressed an interest in shared ownership as well. So I can reassure you that the schemes are being informed by current data.
Thank you. Are there any other Councillor Supposha?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'd really like to congratulate Amy on this report and all the work that she's done so very ably. And as sort of hinted at in the report, it's not easy because you're working with volunteers, volunteer groups, and also, you know, we've had COVID in the middle of all that. So it's quite amazing to be able to deliver and look forward to delivering affordable homes in perpetuity. And I just want to make a comment, is that Robertsbridge and Settlescombe, they did their neighbourhood plans quite early. And I now regret, because I wasn't aware at the time of the need, I really regret that we didn't have an exception site or a community-led housing site, because once we've got our sites allocated and all the referendum, all the voting's gone through, we know, being on the planning committee, that developers get out of delivering their affordable percentage of the sites. And it seems to me that people doing neighbourhood plans now, they've either got to have the exception site or the community-led housing site. But it's interesting that you're using Blackfriars to actually deliver some of these. Is that because it's a Rother alliance? Could it be done with any developer?
Yes, absolutely. Blackfriars is a good opportunity because ultimately we're in control of the land and what happens to the units. And if we can potentially hold and retain more units over and above the minimum affordable housing requirement for local people, then that seems a win-win all round, really. We're de-risking the site but providing homes to meet local need as well. But obviously that is heavily caveated on that scheme that it has to work within the programme because of the nature of it being funded. But yes, there is also the opportunity on private-led schemes. You may have noted in the report that the Sussex Community Housing Hub are looking to progress to become a registered provider themselves. That will really open up the opportunity for new CL teams to form with support from the hub, and means that they could potentially take on Section 106 homes on smaller sites, which are quite difficult to deliver at the moment. So there are lots of opportunities there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. No other questions? Sorry, Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. Something just sprung into my mind, which is dangerous. Could there be provision in this for sort of, if you've got a site, could there be provision for like a self-build site, to sell serviced plots? So is there funding available to assist with that? So that, people want to build their own houses, but they can't either afford a plot or find a plot. But if you've got something like this, which is, community housing, then instead of having to borrow all the money to build the place, could not someone just say, well, is there a service plot? I'll buy that, and they build their own house.
In short, yes, you could. It's something. It's a service that the Community Housing Hub do offer to support a group realise its housing aspirations through self-build. We don't have a policy on affordable housing self-build at the moment, and ultimately this programme is more around delivering affordable housing tenures. But that's not to say that that's not something that could be looked at in future in planning policy, which may lead into community-led schemes as well. But as I say, in short, yes, it is something that's offered, and if it's something that the community group want to achieve, then it's something the hub can help them to achieve.
Come back, Chairman. I remember some years ago, the council had to have a list, or had to provide a list that people could go on to register for a self-build plot. Now, whether anybody ever put their name on that list and probably dropped dead waiting for a self-build plot, but if there's a, if we've, government sort of wanted people to register, and then the council supposedly had to provide the sites. But obviously, if no one registers, then you have to provide the sites. But if people don't know, then they wouldn't know in the first place to register.
Yeah, I can confirm there are a number of people registered on the self-build list, some in this room. The planning policy team are required to respond to that list, and they have introduced a self-build policy in the DASA, which requires a certain percentage on certain size schemes. Again, that does present an opportunity where there's a self-build requirement. If there's also a particular appetite within that community, it could be that they acquire those plots as a group and look to do a self-build project. The more people that are linked to the scheme potentially means that they can benefit from the economies of scale of the funding to build out the sites as affordable self-build plots. So there are endless possibilities and opportunities, and self-build is definitely something the Community Housing Hub do talk to community groups about, but as yet it's not something that we've seen a huge appetite for from the community-led sector as yet. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Paul, for raising those points. I would just mention that Councillor Byrne, who's not here tonight, has acknowledged to me the amount of support and work and guidance you've given him in getting his head around some of the mechanics of how all this works. And I think he's very much appreciative, and as we all are. So thank you very much for that. Okay, if we can have someone to move this particular report.
Yes, I'll move.
Councillor Bayliss, thank you. And somebody second the report, please. Thank you. Councillor Field. And if we can vote on the recommendations. Those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you very much indeed for your time in the report, Amy. Are you wanting to leave us now? By all means. Okay, item 10. Head of Acquisitions, Transformation, Regeneration Report, but I assume this is with Nicola. Yes, thank you. To present and recommend approval of the community grants applications for round 1, 2021/22. Nicola.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. The medium and large community grant schemes were well subscribed, receiving 8 applications totaling approximately £143,000. The available fund for the year is £130,000. It is recommended that 6 applications are approved, as noted in the table in the report in Table 1 and in further detail within Appendix A, with 2 projects not funded. These 6 applications total £115,000. No small grants applications have been awarded so far this financial year, leaving £5,000 ring-fence available until the end of March. It is proposed that there is no round 2 for the medium and large grant scheme for this financial year, and the remaining £10,000 of the available funds to be ring-fenced for community groups to organise commemorative or celebratory events, demonstrating a clear link to the Queen's Platinum Jubilee on the weekend in next June. These are to benefit Rother residents, promoting access for all and community wellbeing. The proposed scheme, as noted in the Scheme Guidance Appendix B, would open in January and close when all the funds have been allocated, or the end of April, whichever is soonest. Applications would be for a maximum of £500 as match funded pound for pound and be considered on their own merit, with delegated authority for the Chief Executive in consultation with the Chair of the Community Grants Panel to award or refuse. I hope that gives us a good summary of the report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola, for the work putting in to produce this report. Questions, Councillor Projer?
Not questions.
Not a question.
Not questions, and I chair it. First of all, can I really congratulate and thank Nicola? It was really, really good working with her. And I say was because she's taken on another post. So that's the first thing to draw your attention to. Within Rother, we're glad to say, and we wish you well in that. But just to say how good it was working with you. Also, I'd like to thank the panel, which is Councillor Bayliss and Councillor Paul Osborne. And Paul, your expertise in the building trade has been absolutely invaluable. We also had David Pankhurst, who's the chair of the Association of Local Councils. We had 2 people from RVA this time, Claire Cordell, the chief executive, but also we had Debbie Wilkins, who's taking on the role of helping us vet. Because if you remember, grants applications go to RVA in case there are any holes in it, in case they need some help getting money from elsewhere. We also have Kevin Bottrell, who's I've forgotten his title, but it's the Economic Development for Action in Royal Sussex. So a really, really useful panel, and I'd like to thank them for their scrutiny of all the applications. Some very, very good applications this time. I think they were all pretty outstanding and going to add value hugely to Rother community. I think 4 in Bexhill. The one that was really outstanding and one we commended was Sedlescombe for the play equipment. They did a competition in the primary school. And these are the applications we really like, where they get into the community to find out if it's really needed, who will use it, do they take into account all users, that kind of thing. Just to point out again that round 1 we had a lot of applications and it's all spent, so we have no round 2 this year. But just to remind you to urge your communities to apply for money if they're going to go for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Fund. and that's ongoing. Kevin Butler also reminded us that there's something called the Queen's Green Canopy Fund. So if you've got communities that want trees, there's loads of them from the Queen. So you could just Google that and it'll come up, Queen's Green Canopy. The other thing to mention is, if you remember, we made a decision some months ago about starting the lottery, which was to subsidise, well, as you know, the community grants is not sustainable. It's taken out of revenue. And so we have to find ways, and the lottery was one of the ways to support community groups and to get some income into the council. That has been delayed because of the restructuring of the council, but is going to happen soon. And the parishes are already asking about it. So, so thank you again, Nicola. And I'm sure that you will all approve of the grants that we've got before us.
Thank you for your comments on that, Sue, and worthy praise of those that were involved. Kevin, have you got any comments to make as finance?
No, as always, this one lands under my portfolio, but I have nothing to do with it. Everyone else does the work, which is lovely. I'll just point out that the money isn't all spent. There is still £5,000 available for small grants, which unfortunately we've had no applications for so far. So members can sell that to their communities. There is still at least 5 grants of £1,000 maximums that are available for this year out of the community grants. Otherwise, I would recommend the report as printed.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And second, thank you, Sue. And if we can vote as per the report recommendations. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Are you going to leave us now, Nicola? By all means. Okay. Item 11. We just move forward. The disposal of land at Blackfriars Battle, a report from Director of Place and Climate Change, Ben Hook, to facilitate the development of housing at Blackfriars through the Alliance Homes Rother Limited. Ben.
Well, my Chair, Stephen Marsden, the Development Project Manager, is here to introduce this report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, members will be aware this site's got quite a long history. I mean, development proposals for this site started 54 years ago. I've been working on the project for the last 3.5 years, and in that time we have secured funding through Homes England to deliver the infrastructure across the site, the spine road across the site. We've secured outline planning permission and reserve matters planning permission for a development of 200 homes, including 35% affordable housing at the very least. And we have also established a housing company, which will be the vehicle through which the residential units will be developed or delivered on the site. The site did have multiple landowners across it. We were the majority landowner as of 3 years ago. There were 3 other land holdings that needed to be acquired in order to bring forward the development on the site. And as of last week, we now own all the land necessary to bring this development site forward. Through Alliance Homes, the company has been in the process of procuring a development partner to bring forward the residential units on the site, and are now at a point where real momentum can be gained in bringing this site forward and actually realising the residential development on the site. So we're at the point now where the land does need to be transferred from Rother District Council's ownership into the ownership of Alliance Homes in order to facilitate the development. So the recommendation of the report is that the Chief Executive is granted delegated authority to dispose of the land on terms that are agreeable to him in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance and performance management. So there are some complexities to the disposal, notably tax implications, valuation, advice that will be necessary, and other legal implications. We do have external consultants working on each of those elements, and we have spent money on the site in order to get to the site to the point where it is now. So the HIF programme came with some pretty strict milestones that had to be met. We needed to get the development moving at an early stage. So things like ecological mitigation, level strategy across the site, some ground investigation work.
That's all been carried out and commissioned by the council, but that is all work that is sort of money, that's part of the HIF fund to deliver this site and bring the site forward. So drawing down money from the Homes England HIF fund, that was contingent on us owning all of the land. We now own all of that land, so I can start drawing down the funds to pay back the money we've spent on doing the enabling works to get it to this stage. So yes, for that reason, the complexity and the grant funding, that the recommendation is to delegate the terms of the sale to the Chief Executive in consultation with portfolio holder for finance and performance management. So yeah, I think that pretty much summarises the report. I'm happy to take any questions from members if there's any questions arising from the report.
Okay. Yes, Chief Executive would like, Malcolm would like to make a comment. Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I just think it's worth noting that, as Stephen said, I mean, this site has been, I was going to say before I was born. Unfortunately, it's not before I was born, but has been some years in the coming, and we, you know, we shouldn't underestimate the achievement, because getting it to this stage was a tremendous amount of effort, and a tremendous amount of, I think it's fair to say, focused effort to actually get it. So this was a site that often at times perhaps had been slipped into the too difficult category, but we've managed to get it out of that and actually get it delivered. And I think it is quite, you know, that achievement should be noted and recognised, that this is only the next stage, and there are still stages left, but I think it's a very positive stage where we can move forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for those comments, Malcolm. Councillor Catherine Field.
Thank you. Yes, I was very pleased to see on this report a whole paragraph devoted to alignment with the environment strategy. So thank you very much, and long may it continue on other reports. I would like to thank Mr. Marsden for the way he has included local members all the way along since he's become involved in this project. It has been really helpful, thank you, because as I'm sure you can appreciate, the community is not, or likes to know what's going on, basically. The community, I believe, accepts that this is inevitable, but even so, it has been a bit of a struggle at times, even though I am no longer the local member. The local member is Councillor Dixon, who I believe was not born when this first began. So he's a newcomer to this whole project. On the subject of local members, though, the resolution talks about who's going to be included when the decisions are made. And of course, the Cabinet portfolio holder for finance and performance management is quite rightly there. It so happens that that person is indeed the local ward member. I would have liked to see, though, on subsequent and similar things, that the ward member is included in these discussions. I think it's really important. It's a coincidence this time, and the ward member will be there, but only because he's the portfolio holder, not there as of right as ward member. Thank you.
Yes, it's a very, very good point. I think that the way that this project has been managed in getting the community on board and working with them does need the involvement of, wherever it might be, of a ward member who knows and understands the community. Kevin, would you like to make a comment, please?
Thank you, Chairman. And yes, I was going to make that point as well, that yeah, I am the ward member and fortunate to have this first development in my very small ward. My ward is only 888 houses. At the last election, this is going to add a fifth to my ward. So I better get out there canvassing. I'd like to also thank Stephen Marsden for his inclusion in ward members and telling us what's going on. It's been very refreshing. He hasn't shied away from telling us anything that we wanted to hear or we didn't want to hear, and unfortunately most of it is stuff we do want to hear, and it's been very good. And I've actually asked Stephen, once the developer has been announced, once the social housing provider partner has been agreed, that in conjunction with the chairman of the council, we could maybe have a presentation at full council, because I think this is such a landmark project that we need to be A, shouting about it, and B, telling everyone about it. On the members, and because this is happening in Blackfriars now, this is going to happen across other parts of the council going forward. So apart from my normal plea that with all of this work, we do need to make sure that the local community is informed of what's going on, and that must be one of the top priorities in this whole project. I'm very pleased to recommend this report as printed. Thank you, Chairman.
And we're going to include the reference to a ward councillor for future. Yep, that's fine. And someone to second this report. Thank you, Catherine. Catherine Field. All those in favour? Unanimous? Yep. Very good. It's very exciting. Any comments, Ben, to make at this stage as it falls within your area of order?
Just to echo the points that Malcolm made, which was that this project really wouldn't have got to where it has without the utter determination and focus that Stephen Marsden has brought to this. And just like to thank him publicly for the work that he's done in that.
Thank you very much indeed. Here, well done. And we'll move on. Thank you very much. Are you going to leave us now, Stephen? Yep, thank you very much. Right, item 12, planning service review update. This is a report from Ben Hook, Director of Place and Climate Change, to update members on the outcome of the IESE planning service review and the consequent action plan based on their recommendations. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will be fully aware that the planning service has not suffered either the best reputation or the best organisation over the last few years. I'm not going to dwell on that. I think it's well understood. I think what this report reflects is a new vision for a way forward, a new approach to how we intend to deliver a planning service within Rother District Council. The review covered a number of areas, as outlined in paragraph 3 of the report, and made 3 sort of key headline recommendations, which was to consider a level of transformation the organisation is prepared to invest in. So that's decisions for us to make about how much we can afford to put into the planning service to achieve the type of service that will meet the expectations of the community. To create a project plan and identify the necessary roles to deliver based on our priorities, and categorise our approach across 3 key areas, which is people, processes, and systems. The report outlines a number of quick wins and early actions that can be achieved through this process, and a longer-term strategy to improve the planning service. This is a report for noting. There's not any decisions required from Cabinet at this stage, but obviously happy to welcome any feedback at this time.
I think we're all very pleased that we've taken this initiative and we're moving on with it at some degree of haste. It's absolutely vital that we deliver a service that meets with the developers, residents of Rother. Jonathan, would you like to add any comments to what Ben has already said, please?
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you. And I know that you're just taking this on. So there's a Freudian slip in the conclusions at item 17. It says these pressures have been exasperated by the long-term difficulties. It should say exacerbated, but it is a Freudian slip because I think we're all extraordinarily exasperated by what's been going on in planning for a long time. So a light-hearted note, but on a very serious subject. You know, most will recognise that I've spent the first year and a half in this administration in a state of frustration to get those in management of the planning service to listen and to address what have been really long-term problems. I mean, these problems have not just appeared overnight. They should have been addressed a long time ago by those who were in administration, and they simply failed this authority. They failed our residents, allowed a very poorly resourced department to continue to fail, and that is a great sadness. I want to thank Malcolm, who addressed it as the first thing that he did, addressed this long-standing problem and started the journey by firstly initiating this review to take us to a desperately needed reimagined planning service. That's a service to deliver something which is expected by residents, agents, parish councils, developers, and officers, as well as members alike, and we've all suffered frustrations. I don't want what I'm saying to be seen as a criticism of our planning officers, because they've been asked to operate with outdated resources and an outdated cultural approach to planning. It's not a surprise that we have had a very high turnover of staff, 2.5 times that of our neighbouring authorities, because they've been asked to work in a difficult cultural environment, in difficult physical environment. You know, it was only 3 months before the COVID struck that officers were asked to work with desks about half the size of the ones that they were currently on, so they could all fit into a small office. Well, that wasn't exactly going to encourage people to come forward and work with us. It's time to fix this inherited problem, and I'm going to thank Robin Venard for taking on the challenge of working with a whole range of groups that he has put together, which involves members, officers at every level, and I think one officer from another council who has gone through this process to help us, and he might want to comment on that as well. You know, from where I can see, the three key change areas are communication, and that's within and without, culture, and removing the sort of statutory silo that planning has wanted to remain in, and the processes, because our processes need a lot of work to allow everyone, to allow the system to work properly. And I don't think those three terms, communication, culture, and process, should be a surprise to anyone. I think I just want to thank all the people who were involved in the first stage of doing the analysis, and that's once again towns and parishes who were incredibly interested and involved, all the interest groups like the Bexhill Heritage and the environmental heritage groups, the officers, the members who came forward, and just a general range of people who really were keen to see us have a good service. And they have given, through this report, an understanding of what we need to deliver. It's not going to be overnight, and it is separate to getting our applications, you know, back into the statutory periods, which is a function really, yes, of what had happened in the past, but also the impact of COVID to some degree as well. So I'd certainly like to propose this report.
Thank you, Jonathan. Comments, Christine, Councillor Bates, and then Councillor Field.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, as the portfolio lead for economic development and regeneration, I really welcome this report and you know, welcome the changes that have been made. It became really obvious to me right from the very word go of taking on this area of responsibility that we were actually losing really talented entrepreneurial developers who really wanted to invest, you know, substantial amounts of money into Rother, but felt that our, you know, planning processes at the time just were not fit for purpose, and you know, it just blocked them doing what they wanted to do. And if there are people listening to tonight's debate, you know, all I want to say to you is just bear with us. We're at the start of this process. And for me, you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. And I think it's got worse, but it will get significantly better over the next 2 or 3 years as we address the areas that Councillor Vinehall has indicated. So that's my message to the people that I work with through my portfolio. Just bear with us while we get this sorted, and it's going to be a much better process led, you know, by Ben Hook, who is our new Director of Place and Climate Change. This, you know, putting the planning and putting regeneration under the same area is a great step forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Councillor Catherine Field.
Thank you. Yes, I also welcome this report. In the 29 years I have been an elected representative, I've sat in parish council meetings listening to people complaining at length about the planning department, which never used to worry me until I became a district councillor, and then it became really rather embarrassing. So really welcome this, and the fact that somebody has taken the bull by the horns and decided to sort it out. Looking at the action plan though, most of it is technically about planning, except the first item, which is website design, and it talks about redesigning the planning pages. The comment, though, says the council's website has already undergone major improvement, particularly around customer self-service, as if, therefore, we don't think we need to do anything. Once complaints about planning are over with, people then turn to complain to me about the difficulty of accessing the planning part of the district council's website. People do not feel it's user friendly. And I think, as in so many areas, people who do this work know what they're doing, know what they're talking about, and think it's okay. Because they're not looking at it, because they have so much knowledge that they can't look at it from the perspective of those of us who have rather less knowledge and actually no interest at all until it becomes relevant to us personally. So I think my plea really is look very seriously at the way people interact with the website and ask novices, ask people who know nothing, just fulfill a task using the website, and that way we should be able to ease out problems and help our residents to access us much more easily and with much less frustration.
Thank you for those comments, Catherine. Robin, did you want to make a
Chairman,
response?
I was just going to clarify the first comment really from that appendix is to identify for members and for the public that actually the website has undergone a lot of change and a lot of improvement. Not necessarily in the planning area, I agree, but it was to highlight that it wasn't the whole website needed a revamp. It was about planning and how, as you say, how you access planning. And I personally try to access planning through the website in order to understand what you see, where you land on our website, etc. So we are in talks with James Waite and the transformation team about how we improve that, how we get our communication and messaging right, so that people know how to get into that part of the website and how they can then transact with the authority in a much more efficient and understandable way. So it's work that's going on. I wanted to highlight in the comment that it wasn't the entire website is not needing an overhaul, because we have done an awful lot of work in trying to make it more accessible to people and to drive particularly around self-help. There's been much more in that area.
Thank you, Robin. Malcolm, did you want to make a comment, please?
Yeah, just very quickly, Chairman, and thank you for the comments that have been made. This was one of the tasks that I picked up when I first took on the role as Chief Executive. It was took a little bit longer than I'd perhaps anticipated, and the difficulty of some of that was carrying out a review when you couldn't do face-to-face meetings and everything was done over Teams. But I think we've got some valuable information from the review. The challenge to us has been to actually turn that into valuable action that actually makes a difference. And that's what we're going through the process of doing. I have reiterated what, reiterated because you only said it tonight, I have said the same things that Councillor Bayliss has said to individuals, developers and agents and architects, that this isn't going to change overnight. But we are trying to do something to get some of it changed overnight, and hence we brought in Capita to actually reduce the backlog and take some of that pressure off officers who, no matter how hard they worked, every time they looked over their shoulder, there was the mountain sitting there that wasn't going anywhere. I think once we've got, that is now coming down. What we've now got to do, and Robin is leading on this work with Ben, is actually to get those practices and procedures in place and processes in place that will make it a much more streamlined service, and a service that we can be proud of. And I think we've all got a role to play in that, whether it be both members and officers, but we will get there. We are getting there. And part of the reason for focusing it with somebody who wasn't involved in the service, i.e. Robin, was to make sure we maintained that focus rather than it got lost. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Malcolm. I think it would have been quite easy to have deferred this piece of work. It's a massive piece of work that we've undertaken. With COVID being around, we could have easily said, let's just defer it and wait to the outcome, but we didn't. I think that we actually took a lead from the chair of planning and the vice chair, who had worked very, very closely to identify where the real issues were and what we had to do to put it right. And I think the work done by IEC gave us this sort of vehicle in order to develop to where we are now, and acknowledge the work that Robin has put in bringing this report together tonight. And I think we will be making some significant progress going forward. I'm very certain of that. Yes, Councillor Suproja.
Thank you. I think it's been mostly said. And Councillor Bailey said it had to get worse before it could get better. Actually, I think I don't think it could have got worse. So this is a real turning point for us. And just to reiterate is that we actually didn't realise quite what the problems were until we took over, when the Alliance took over, and we knew straight away something had to be done, and something really quite drastic. And so we were so pleased that Malcolm recognised straight away we needed this review of planning, and the review wasn't quick and easy. It was a very lengthy and complicated review, and included a lot of people. And then, of course, we had COVID. So it's all taken a lot longer than we ever thought was possible. And meanwhile, things got really quite, well, you only have to talk to councillors and the complaints they were getting to know what it was like. I do want to make one extra point, though, is that I think our members recognise how lucky we are to have Councillor Vinehall leading this, because he comes from a background of being a chair of a parish council. He comes from a background of going through the trauma of the first neighbourhood plan. And if you've got an hour or two to spend, he will tell you how difficult it was working with Rother at that time. So we have got somebody who's particularly knowledgeable, but also somebody who's not going to say, oh, that's all right. He never said, oh, that's all right. Everything that we did, we were doing to make it a better place for our residents, our agents, our applicants, etc. And so I just wanted to add that point. Thank you.
I would strongly support those comments, because it was a massive piece of work that we undertook, and we could have only done that with the expertise of members, knowledge, and actually working with everybody else out there. And that's a real pleasing factor to me. We've gone externally to IEC and we brought in their expertise to handle the review. We've discussed it with officers, members, developers, towns and parishes. You know, we've gone out there. So it's a great inspiration of how working together gives this sort of outcome. Jonathan.
Well, thank you very much, Jack. That's super, those words you said. Earlier on, Councillor Dixon mentioned that the Blackfriars project was a milestone, and it is a milestone, and it was something that had been left in the too hard basket, the too difficult basket, and this is the same in another form. So this administration has really already addressed just two of the major issues that needed addressing in this authority, and I'm certainly pleased to be part of that, and I know that we will see further milestones along both of those roads, and that will be a great testament to what we have achieved just in a couple of years.
Indeed. This is a report just for noting, I believe. Robin, looking forward to you taking this action plan forward. I know that you're chomping at the bit to do so, and thank you for all the work that you've done to bring this together tonight. So I think we're all very, very comfortable with this report, and it's the start of, or the beginning of the start, or the start of the beginning of getting this part of our business right. Okay. Planning review, item 13.
Chairman, I just redeclare my interest and move before your discussions, if I may.
Your choice, Malcolm.
In case anybody says anything horrible, right?
You can listen at the door. Okay, so with Malcolm leaving the chamber, item 13, to recommend the appointment of the Chief Executive and Head of Paid Service role on a substantive basis. For someone to take over that role during a pandemic was pretty tough, I felt, at the outset. And also to highlight some of the issues this evening that have come forward, the stalling of Blackfriars, the issues of our planning area. So it hasn't been an easy ride, but I'm very pleased to be able to recommend to Council that initial year, the Chief Executive and Head of Paid Service, that Malcolm be appointed to the role on a substantive basis. I think we've all identified the difficulties that have beset us right the way across our business, and bringing forward the proposed restructuring of the senior management team, and working closely with members of Cabinet in order to bring this council forward to deliver what we want to produce and perform within our corporate plan. I think there's any points of comment or discussion at this stage. Now's the opportunity to do it. This goes through to full council for the sanction of full council. So I think we take a vote on tonight as a recommendation, which I'm delighted to be able to propose that we move forward with inviting Malcolm to take on this role on a permanent basis. Thank you. And those in favour, which I hope is unanimous. Thank you. And part of that is the restructuring, which I think again is quite an exciting way forward for those officers that are involved. Do we want to just? Yeah. What? Yes, he better needs to come back now. He could have gone home. Yeah, that's right. Welcome back. Okay, we're on agenda item 14, report to regarding the additional restrictions grant discretionary business grant scheme. Ben, are you presenting this, or is Robin presenting this, or Malcolm, do you want to have a say on this before we start?
No, but I would like to make a comment on it later. So it's either Ben or Robin.
This is for Robin. I thought it was. Yeah, you did a swap, didn't you, somehow?
Yes, I do volunteer. I was hard pressed. So pleasingly, the authority has expended all the original discretionary grant funding that we got from government in terms of supporting businesses through COVID. That's some 2.7 million. In fact, actually, we spent 2.85 million, so we spent a bit more than we actually received in total. And that enabled us to secure an extra £711,000 of grant funding from government in order to keep the support going through to the end of March 2022. So what we've done is to obviously look at what we could possibly do with this funding. And rather than in the past effectively just support businesses through replacement of lost income, is to try and see if we can put the money into delivering things that have a longer term impact on the local economy and hopefully local jobs at the end of the day. So the four areas that we've sort of looked at are those businesses that are being forced to close temporarily through staff self-isolating. So we know that's quite a problem for businesses in all sorts of different sectors where a number of staff have gone off with COVID, and that's forced them to have to close because they haven't got the capacity to continue, and that will reduce their income and their ability to stay viable and liquid. Rural businesses, Rother is predominantly a rural area, and therefore we thought it'd be sensible to focus some of our funding into supporting rural businesses. Empty shops, everybody will see in the high streets of whatever town you might be in, obviously that there are a number of shops that are empty, and we're looking at how we might improve the visual display to the area. And one of the ideas there is about putting things in the windows in order to improve the street scene, if you like, in terms of encouraging people back into the town, making it look a much more pleasant place to visit. And also empty commercial space. And by commercial space, I mean anything that's not residential. It is both high street and also local industrial type premises, where we're trying to encourage people back into those vacant properties, and some of them may have been vacant for some time, and use our information that we have on our property database in terms of business rate information in order to try and target landlords to try and encourage new tenants into our area and create hopefully jobs. So those are the main broad areas that we're thinking of focusing on. And obviously we're going to try and work with our partners in East Sussex, through the Business East Sussex Growth Hub, and also probably through Job Centre Plus, for example, where clearly there is the supply of future staffing and be able to encourage people back into work. Another area that's come up more recently since publishing the report is around training. Now, whether we can put support into training and helping businesses improve their activities through that kind of activity. I think the key thing here is that there's flexibility in whatever scheme we come up with. That's why we've asked for a more delegated process in terms of being able to modify and change what we do over the remainder of the financial year in order to get money out the door as quickly as we can. Businesses themselves don't have to expend the money by 31st of March 2022, but we do. We have to get the money out the door. One downside is that the grant conditions are talking around not being able to fund capital expenditure, so funding ongoing expenditure. But we're going to have to be creative in how we use this funding in order to enable businesses to maybe invest in capital projects by helping them out with their day-to-day running costs, for example. So we're going to have to be a bit creative around that. And we can build that into guidance that we give businesses in terms of making applications. In terms of applications itself, rather than the normal process which we have been running, application, set criteria, yes, you get it, no, you don't, is more of an application process akin to the community grants sort of type of process, and therefore we're recommending, as we've already got the community grants panel set up, that we use that as the hub of what the application assessment process. So we have effectively a group of people with wide-ranging knowledge of the local economy, knowledge of the voluntary sectors and all the various aspects to our local economy, and therefore can bring hopefully some experience and expertise in making decisions around what sort of grants that we can award under this funding. And also, because we're not having a second round, they'll have an extra time to do some extra work. We are also going to consult clearly with the Chambers of Commerce, Federation of Small Businesses. I think that's already started in terms of getting their ideas and their support to whatever we want to do, and also help us actually spend that money by the end of March. So happy to answer any questions on the report.
Yeah, thank you very much, Robin. And I think we just acknowledge that the work that your team, Chris Watchman's team, in order to secure this addition, the work that we're getting money out, has enabled us to secure this additional significant amount of funding. And I do like the fact that this inclusiveness, being flexible, discretionary, which doesn't exclude anybody from this, and the built-in controls and checks of the panel, because I think that's important that we have consistency with that. Are there any comments, Councillor Christine Bayliss, and then Councillor Dixon?
Yes, thank you very much, and I'd like to sort of commend Chris Watchman and the team really for doing a brilliant job. Just 3 people, and they've distributed 2.8.
Total, they've distributed over about 35 million over the last 18 months. So.
£35 million. I mean, that is absolutely an amazing achievement. I would say that we probably are one of the best performing local authorities. I know I looked at a table. I went to a Team East Sussex meeting not so long ago and looked at a table where we were the leading authority in terms of getting the money out really quickly. That was one of the things that when I did my listening to businesses Zoom calls in May last year, that was one of the things that they said, for the people that didn't automatically qualify for these statutory grants, they really needed help right there and then. People were saying, how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to pay my mortgage? And so I've always admired the way that we've taken some of that feedback. We've crafted a scheme which meets local needs right across. So there may be some local needs from Rye and district that perhaps aren't the same as what the needs that we've got in Bexhill, but we've crafted schemes, that really supported businesses, and it is to be really commended that we've got this additional money. Yeah, we have done a little bit. I've sort of pushed this out through some of my social media channels over the weekend and had some feedback. With businesses are looking potentially at maybe some sort of training about how you get online, how you make that work. I know that our regeneration team, for example, have been putting together sort of like 2 or 3 hour sessions for for businesses around online, you know, how you get online, how you sign up for a Facebook account, that sort of thing. But actually, some of our businesses need much more in-depth training and hand-holding, because we have to accept we're living in a world where, you know, if you've got a retail business, it will be partly, you know, through your shop or your retail premises, and partly it will be online. And, you know, as I say, that's growing. I like the ideas around incentivising filling empty shops. I think those are really important. And also to support those odd businesses that end up having to close because they've all tested positive from COVID. We know of a very popular local business in the town centre that had to close for over a week because all the staff tested positive for COVID, and they weren't entitled to any financial support or any recompense for that week's loss of earnings. So I think these are really good proposals, and I look forward to working on them. Please pass on my thanks to Chris Watchman and the team. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just invite two non-cabinet members, Councillor Brian Drayson and Councillor Paul Cortell, before I invite Kevin Dixon to move the motion.
Thank you, Chair. I was lovely to see the bit about empty shops in there, because when I first stood for the council, I thought we've got to do something with the empty shops. I suspect it would be quite difficult for you to decide how long a shop needs to be empty for, etc. But can we also make sure that part of any grant says the shopkeeper or landlord has to clean the windows so that they can be seen? That has to be part of the grant, I would suggest. Thank you.
Councillor Paul Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. I very much welcome the proposal concerning training, including IT training, web training. I like the emphasis that Mr. Bernard suggested concerning the various growth opportunities, but I'm concerned that possibly a business that has had some other special circumstances which may cause it to close needs to be included. And I'd just like a reassurance that we're not just talking about the specific criteria that Robin has listed, but that there will be some flexibility outside these criteria.
I think the whole thing is about being very flexible, being inclusive of everything that's out there that can come forward, and we need to encourage everyone to apply. And that sort of local discretion from the panel is paramount to making this be a fair distribution. But thank you for making that point, Paul. Kevin, would you like to?
Thank you, Chairman, and I'd like to associate myself with the comments commending the team for getting this money out. It is a remarkable amount of money that's keeping the wheels of business running in Rother. A couple of points. I think just to note that we can't spend the money ourselves. It can't be issued to the district council, nor can it be given to any other council. So no town or parishes can apply, nor can the county council. So this has got to go out to businesses. So if we want a project done, someone's going to have to do it for us. We can't do that ourselves. This marks an important change, I think, in what we're now trying to do. We're trying to want to grow business within the district rather than just trying to keep businesses afloat. And I think businesses now, apart from obviously a few sectors like aviation and foreign holidays, businesses now should be on their own 2 feet and looking to move forward. If we're having to prop up businesses at this point, I think those businesses are probably going to be not viable. And I think it's important now that this is what we want to do. This is an innovative approach, if I can say it, that we've got a £500,000 fund for people to bid for and can come up with ideas. It's up to businesses and it's up to them to come up with what they want and see if we agree. And it's going to be quite an interesting process. But we do want to generate jobs. We do want to add to the local economy, and at the same time try and achieve some carbon reduction across the district. I'm hoping that some tourism businesses would apply and come up with something, because that is our major industry in Rother. And I can assure as well that the delegations that are here that we will communicate to members the final scheme and how it comes about. But I'm hoping that the actual rules are going to be not much, because that's the whole point of the scheme. I think Councillor Winehall wants to say something before I.
Yes, well, I think we're all in support of this, from what I can hear. Would this include non-business employers like charities? So charity might want to employ more staff. Employment is good. Would that be something that might be included?
As far as I'm aware, charities are not excluded.
I will double check the criteria, but as far as I'm aware, it's our discretionary scheme, so you can include whatever type of business you wish to include, and that could include charities or other organisations.
And when we get to the point where we have that criteria, a sort of like an A4 page or something to give to businesses. I know a lot of them we may have on record, but there are ones that we don't. And I would personally want to go around my wards to each business and talk to them about it and hand them something, to encourage them to go forward.
Right.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I spoke to Councillor Projek earlier. The Community Grants Panel is the ideal vehicle for this to happen. We may need another business person on that panel. There is a bit of a lack of business people on that panel. Of course, Councillor Osborne will be a valuable member of that with his fantastic building trade knowledge. So apart from that, I'd like to recommend these recommendations as printed.
Thank you. Malcolm, you wanted to make a comment before we go to vote, perhaps?
Just very quickly, Chairman, I do think this is a real opportunity for us to focus on key businesses and key business sectors in the district. In the past, if you qualified, we paid money, and it was a very much a sort of, and I don't want to use the word scattergun because that's unfair. It was businesses that needed it, and that. But this gives us an opportunity, to look at sectors, to look at individual businesses. It's going to be very important we communicate this and get it out to people so that we actually get the message out. I think £500,000 is a significant amount of money. We could probably have spent twice that if we've got £500,000. It's still significant, and I think it just gives us this opportunity to really promote businesses and those businesses that have got opportunities to grow and move forward within the district. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Someone to second the report? Those in favour? Unanimous. I think this just again is, Malcolm used the word opportunity. I've always said that coming out of where we are was going to be opportunities to grasp. And I think one of the opportunities here is working together again with the community, our business leaders, our community groups that are out there. So I think this is another good success story. Thank you, Robin, for bringing it forward this evening. And I think we're almost at a point of 2018 closing the meeting, Malcolm.
Chairman, yes.
Thank you very much indeed.